Hey everybody, this is Andrew from CAEexamtips.com. This is the third of my three-part video series, How to Learn English Vocabulary for Your Cambridge exam. In the first two parts, we talked about choosing what to learn, and the second one was getting it into your brain. That was a lot of things like repetition, using visualization, and things like that. This one is about activating it. In other words, how do you get a word from your passive to your active vocabulary? And yeah, it's something I have been thinking about a lot for the past couple of years. And I think it really makes the difference between students who are okay and students who really make progress and become good at English. This isn't going to be super scientific, but it's based on my experience and feelings of nearly 20 years of teaching this stupid language. So here's what you don't do. You never say, oh, I'll never use that word, right? Oh, it's so annoying, people, it's so annoying. Instead, you should say, how can I use that word? Then find or create a way to use it, right? This is the thing that separates normal from good students. The good students find or create ways to use this vocabulary that they want to learn. They use it, practice, and then it's in their head, and then they can use it whenever they want in the future. The weirdest example is probably the best example. I lived in Taiwan for 18 months, in Taipei. And the main station there is the hub of the transport system. So you've got all the trains, all the underground, and the buses. They all meet in this one place. So it's so busy, super busy all the time. And there was this one guy who would be there, and his whole life seemed to be just learning English. And I think what he did was he would wake up, get his English book out, learn a new word, go to the main station, find foreign people, go straight up to them and use that word in such a weird sentence. It was so bizarre. He'd come up to me and he'd be like, hello, my doctor told me that I shouldn't worry about my flatulence. And he would kind of wait for my reaction, and I would be like, okay, bye. And he'd be like, flatulence? And I'd be like, yeah, leave me alone. So he'd learn that word, and he wanted to practice and check that it was right, that he said it right, that he used it right. And first of all, that is insane. Do not do that. But the basic principle is good and correct. You have to find ways to use that word, just like that guy, right? Do you know what I mean? I call that kind of person the word of the day person. Another good example of that is my German friend Anna, and she is super good at English, and she has a little book where she writes down new words that she likes, and she would just speak normally, normal sentence, and then she would say this word, and I would look at her, and I'd be like, is that word of the day? And she always said, no, I know that word. But I know it was word of the day. Because it was so weird and it came from nowhere. So she would say things like, well, he didn't come to the party, so it's moot now. And she'd have this little smug face when she said the word moot. And I thought it was really funny, but it's also good technique, right? That's her using the new word that she learned. Or even if it was an old word, I think she read it in a little book, and she was like, right, I'm going to use that word today. And then she did, and now she knows that word. If you have an English class, you might have a teacher who encourages you to use the new words. So at the beginning of every unit, there are 10 new words that you're supposed to learn. And sometimes I say to my students something like, oh, you get a point every time you use that word, right? And then they'll have the conversations, and you'll see them like writing down, yeah, I used that word, or they'll put little ticks next to the words. Great. But I don't do that all the time. I probably should do it more. But in the end, it's your responsibility to learn English, right? So you have to do this for yourself. You have to create that. So whether you give yourself a challenge, I'm going to use these 3 words today, or points, or compete with a friend, Like, you have to work out the system that's good for you, right? I'm just talking about the concept of finding ways, creating ways to use it. You have to do the specifics, right? In terms of speaking, if you want to have conversations and use new words, first of all, don't be afraid to talk to yourself. In fact, I would encourage that. I live in Switzerland, and there are probably words that I've seen thousands and thousands of times, but I've never said that word. And when it comes to the time when I might want to say that word, I find that it's super difficult because I never actually made my mouth create that shape and that sound before. So yeah, if I was going to go and use the word Schrumpfkopf today, which is my favorite German word, I would be going around my flat, getting dressed, saying Schrumpfkopf, because it's quite hard at the end with the P and the F. Schrumpfkopf, Schrumpfkopf. Du hast einen Schrumpfkopf. And I would just practice. And yeah, that's weird, but it's a bit of experience of saying the word. And also, we're talking about bringing it from passive to active. What better way to make it active than saying it, right? So that's something you can do, like a pre-step. Then seek places to use English. So you go and find groups. So you might have some English friends. Can you hang out with them more? Can you find a language exchange in your area? You teach them German, they teach you English, whatever language you speak. There are local meetup groups in almost every city. You're especially looking for groups that have expats in them, expatriates, people like me. So in Switzerland, there's a website called English Forum. And I used to go out with those guys, and it would be bars. I organized a day once. It was incredible. It was the best day ever. And yeah, you can go there. Everybody speaks English, basically. That's the universal language with the Spanish and the French and the Swedish and whatever. So yeah, go and speak English, right? Go and find a place. Some of the people in Switzerland, they go hiking. So if you like hiking, you go with a hiking group, you walk, and you know, from time to time you say things, right? What could be better? Work, of course, is a big opportunity. I'm amazed that I have students in my classes and they have actual English and American people in their team, and they come to me with questions. I'm like, well, talk to that guy, right? Ask him. And you can't do it to the same extent, maybe, and there's some social things, but hey, you've got a resource there and you can use that resource. You can go to the American guy and say, hey, do you want to hear about my flatulence? As an example, as a stupid example, don't do that. And of course, you can sign up for an English class. You have an English class, you have an English teacher, you have other people hopefully at the same level as you, and then you can, in that English class, use the new words that you're learning. Skype English lessons, even better if you don't have the money or the time or the availability to go to actual English lessons. Yeah, do it on Skype. You know that I recommend this thing called italki. It's a website where you can meet English teachers and then you do lessons on Skype. And it's quite cheap and they are good. I have a whole page on my website about them and there's like 3 videos interviewing them. They're great. I would have lessons with them. And the price is just so low. It's bonkers. Right. So that's an opportunity for you to, just practice and stuff. But also, you're the customer there. You're the boss as well, right? So you can set the agenda. You can say to your teacher, okay, or like even before the lesson, you can say, hey, I have a story to tell that you prepared. I have a story to tell so that I can practice the 3rd conditional. If one of my students came to me and said that, I would be in absolute heaven. That would be amazing. So that's an example with grammar, but what about vocabulary? You could study 10 house and home words or whatever the thing you want to practice is. Study 10 house and home words and ask your teacher to ask you questions on that topic. So they don't know what words you know, and your challenge is to use those words. Just like the exam, right? You can prepare, you can practice. All right, what about writing? I mean, that's the easiest one of all. There's so many places where you can do this for free. If you just go to Google and you go, Game of Thrones forum or whatever it is that you like. I like Game of Thrones because it's the best thing ever. You'll find there's like 5 forums where people talk about Game of Thrones, and then you can join up. Be careful with joining up. So you join and then you don't write anything for a few days, right? You just read and you get a sense of what the forum is like, and don't go asking the same stupid questions that every new person asks. So you just wait a few days, get the feel for it, and then you can start joining in conversations. And so you can, whatever it is that you're interested in, you can have conversations with people from around the world on that topic, right? And in that situation, you can use that vocabulary that you're learning. Reddit is a big website with a lot of good things, a lot of really bad things, but they have all kinds of groups. There's a huge Game of Thrones group. There's groups about embroidery, about gardening, whatever it is that you like. You'll find people who are obsessed with that on Reddit, and you can join and you can be in those conversations and you can practice. And there are groups about learning English as well. Not probably the most helpful people, but you might get lucky. You might end up with a good conversation there. And italki has this really good thing. I was looking at it this morning. It's called Notepad. And on the Notepad, you can write little texts, and people reply to like your opinions. And then other people reply with like grammar and vocabulary feedback. Like, oh, that grammar was wrong. Oh, you can't use that word in that way. It's a great resource, right? italki, I like it. So those are like forum type things. Facebook groups, they're a mixed bag. You can search like Cambridge English, English Advanced, Learn English, something like that. You can join those groups. Some of them are quite low quality, and yeah, but it's free and you can take a look around. You might find some people that you like talking to. Go and have a look. Basically, I'm busy, right? I've got things to do. So you have to do most of this work for yourself. So you are younger than me, probably. You know the internet. I saw this crazy thing, this website called You Now, and it's just people who are streaming like this, but live, and there's a chat box, and they just talk, and then people ask questions, and it's so weird. I'm too old for that stuff, right? So new things that are coming out, new apps, new websites, new programs, new social media. I don't know. I'm not going to tell you where to find that. You can do it. Use your brain. Leave me alone. I've got to sleep longer and longer. I think correction is a really important part of this whole activating the language thing, because you want to try new words, new phrases, new grammars, whatever, and know that you're doing it right. And if you don't allow people to correct you, then you're not going to get that feedback. So some of my students, when I give them corrections, they go, oh, thanks. Like, thank you. And I think that's, for me, I would correct them anyway because I'm a professional English teacher. But consider the difference between someone who I give them the correction and they go, English is, hate it, why? Right, that guy, versus, yeah, thanks. Oh, thanks, that's good to know. Right? Those two students, which one gets more correction, which one gets better correction, right? It's just obvious, right? Be that one. Friends, if you have native English speaking friends, give them thanks, or encourage them to correct you. I have a Spanish friend. His English is phenomenal. It's just almost perfect, but not quite, right? And sometimes he will make a mistake, and when he does, I tell him, and he says, thank you. And then the next time he makes a mistake, I correct him because he said thank you, and I know that he appreciates it and he wants it, because he doesn't have anyone else correcting him because their English isn't good enough to correct him. So I'm the only person who gives him, who can take him from there to there, from 99.99999 to 99.99999% perfect. So if you create that atmosphere with native speakers, they might give you corrections. That will be very helpful. Here's a phrase that you might say to somebody, if you hear me make this mistake, please point it out. For example, if I was a French person who always said this instead of that, or that instead of this, I would say to somebody, native speaker, every time I do that, can you tell me? And I would get that feedback, and then I'd be like, ah! And it's the same with the new vocabulary as well, right? You can say, hey, my thing now is word of the day. I'm going to try and use word of the day. I'm going to say moot and flatulence. Can you help me? Can you tell me when I use it right, when I use it wrong, please? Create positive environment. Repetition, repetition, repetition. Repetition. So it's not enough to do this once. The guy in Taiwan who came up to me, I think when he finished with me, he scuttled off, and then he went to the next white person, and he was like, ugh, I was just talking to this British guy about my flatulence. Right? Repetition. If you do it 50 times, you're going to learn that word. 50 times is too much for some of the rare words, but you can try it a few times, okay? Repetition, 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 repetition. And then I think the last point, seek stressful, challenging scenarios. I mean, you should do that anyway because you're practicing for an exam, probably, if you're watching this video. But even just for your general English, this works for anything. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger, when he was doing his bodybuilding, like he didn't just do this repetition 20 times a day with bigger and bigger weights. He would change the movement completely. He would go from push-ups to pull-ups to I don't know what else those people do. But the muscles couldn't get used to one thing, so they had to do different things every day or every week, and that was a shock, and they had to respond, and that way you build the muscle faster. And I think it's the same with the language. Like I have students who only speak English with me, the greatest teacher in the world, in a comfortable classroom in Switzerland, one of the nicest places in the world, right? That's fine, but that's not enough. What you need is a shock to the system. You need to get out of your comfort zone sometimes. So what are some examples of that? Well, one of my students, she didn't have a choice, but it was good for her anyway. She had to do a TV interview with the CEO of her company, which is one of the biggest companies in Switzerland. So he's like the big boss, and she's like not. And that was such a stress for her. And whatever mistakes she made that day, she's never going to make that mistake again, I think. And with the eyes of the world on her, as she was thinking, I think that was just a great opportunity for her to learn and get better. If you work in an office, there are all these conference calls. Maybe you can be the one who hosts it. You're the one who says, "Oh, welcome, Sven," and be that guy in the middle. Maybe you can volunteer for that. If you have guests coming to your office, you can be the one who says, "Oh, I want to show them around," right? So you bring them around. You do the small talk. You say, "Oh, this is Sven. He's in charge of." You have to describe all the rooms and all the people and what all the functions of the people, and you have to do it on a professional level. And if it goes badly, you get fired because you lost the contract. Something like that, right? A little bit of pressure. If you don't have a job, but you have English lessons, what can you do to push yourself a little bit? And what I had to think about this. Basically anything where you have to stand up. So you're going to volunteer. You're going to say to the teacher, "Hey, I have prepared a 3-minute review of Ghostbusters, the new Ghostbusters." And you stand up and you just get angry for 3 minutes because it's so terrible or whatever. Or you stand up and you say, "I love Ghostbusters. This is why." And you're standing up and everyone's looking at you and they're thinking, "Why is this guy standing up?" And it's just a completely different dynamic in the classroom than when everybody's sat down. Or you and another student stand up and do a role play and you try to make it as real as possible. Something like that, right? Just whatever you do normally, do something different, do the opposite. Challenge yourself. Oh man, I would love a student to come to me and say, "Can I stand at the front and talk about this movie that I watched?" Wow. I guess what I'm doing here is I'm trying to like create my dream student. They don't exist. So if you're on holiday, ask a policeman the way to the Queen's house. Basically, there are certain groups of people who are more stressful to talk to than normal people. One of those, I think, is policemen, especially in countries where they have guns. But yeah, if you go up to somebody in authority and you have a conversation, I think that's a little bit more stressful than normal. There's a little bit more that could go wrong, let's say. Attractive people can be very stressful to talk to, so try and do that. There was this app, Duolingo. I think I was learning Spanish on it, and they don't do it anymore, but they had this little game where you had to like translate a word or put one word into a sentence, and you had to type the word, and there was a timer, and you were competing against this other person. So if you did it in 34 seconds and he did it in 33 seconds, he would win, right? So he got the point. And it was somehow the time limit and the competition element made it a little bit stressful. Not stressful really, but a little bit like, oh, like, you know, the blood was pumping a little bit faster. And it was so much fun, and I was super motivated to beat those people. I think that pushed me to learn more than anything ever in the history of me learning Spanish. And yeah, they stopped doing that. But you could maybe put yourself in those situations where you have to compete or talk to people in authority, or you have to stand up, or everybody's watching you, or there's some risk or whatever. You know what I'm talking about, I hope. All right, that's all I have to say on the subject of activating vocabulary. To sum up, use it or lose it. If you do not use these words, they will never be part of your active vocabulary. End video. All right, guys, that's all from me. Good luck in your exam, and goodbye.